Alright, let's dive into this because it's a tennis story that has everyone talking, and personally, I think it's a perfect example of how one controversial call can overshadow an entire match. So, Jack Draper, the British #1, just had his Indian Wells title defense cut short by Daniil Medvedev, and the way it went down. Let's just say it sparked a ton of debate. Here's the deal, Draper was ruled to have caused a hindrance to Medvedev during a crucial moment in the second set. Now, if you're like me and you've been following tennis for a while, you know how rare and controversial these hindrance calls can be. But this one? It's a doozy. First off, let's set the scene. Draper had just come off a massive win against Novak Djokovic, less than 24 hours earlier, mind you. That's a huge physical and mental toll, and honestly, it's impressive he even made it to the quarterfinals. But against Medvedev, who's on an 8-match winning streak, Draper was already facing an uphill battle. The first set was pretty one-sided, with Medvedev taking it 6-1. But the second set? That's where things got interesting. At 5-5, 0-15, Draper raised his arms after a disputed line call. The umpire, Lee Taut, reviewed the footage and decided Draper's movement had distracted Medvedev, awarding him the point. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Medvedev himself admitted he wasn't that distracted. He said, "Was I distracted big time?" No, but the rule is the rule, right? Or is it? This raises a deeper question: should the umpire's decision rely solely on the rulebook, or should player intent and actual impact matter more? Personally, I think this is where the controversy really lies. What makes this really interesting is how subjective the call was. Draper argued that Medvedev had plenty of time to recover after the gesture, and they even played 2 more shots before the point was awarded. From my perspective, this isn't just about whether Draper's movement was distracting, it's about whether the umpire's interpretation of the rule was fair. And let's be honest, these kinds of calls can completely shift the momentum of a match. Medvedev ended up breaking Draper's serve and sealing the win, but the crowd? They were not having it. Medvedev got booed, which says a lot about how the audience felt about the call. Now, let's talk about Draper's reaction because, in my opinion, it's a masterclass in sportsmanship. He shook hands with both Medvedev and the umpire before leaving the court. Class act. But in his post-match interview, he didn't hold back. He said, "I feel a bit hard done by, and honestly, who can blame him?" He acknowledged that Medvedev was the stronger player but felt the call was excessive. What many people don't realize is how often players make gestures during matches without it being called a hindrance. So, why this time? Was it because of the high-stakes moment? Or was it just a tough break for Draper? If you take a step back and think about it, this situation highlights a bigger issue in tennis: the gray areas in the rules. Hindrance calls are supposed to protect players from unfair distractions, but when the player themselves admits they weren't significantly affected, should the call still stand? It's a fine line, and one that's going to keep fans and analysts debating for a while. Personally, I think this is a moment the sport needs to reflect on. How can we ensure these calls are fair and consistent? Because right now, it feels like it's more about interpretation than clear-cut rules. And let's not forget the broader context here. Medvedev is on fire right now, with 16 straight sets won since his loss to Tsitsipas. He's clearly in top form, and this win sets him up for a semi-final clash with Carlos Alcaraz, who just outclassed Cameron Norrie. That match? It's going to be epic. But for Draper, this loss is a tough pill to swallow, especially given how close the second set was. One thing that immediately stands out is how resilient he's been this tournament, and I'm sure we'll see him bounce back stronger. So, what's the takeaway here? In my opinion, it's that tennis, like any sport, is as much about the rules as it is about how they are applied. This match wasn't just about Draper versus Medvedev, it was about the umpire's call and how it shaped the outcome. It's a reminder that sometimes, the most memorable moments in sports aren't the wins or losses, but the controversies that make us question the very fabric of the game. What do you think? Was the call fair, or did Draper get a raw deal? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown. Catch you in the next one.